I've known Tom Woods for over 40 years, but I heard he's got a new project. So I was curious. I managed to track him down in the south of France where he was aboard his boat, and he agreed to do a video Zoom session with me to answer a few questions about this project. Hello, Tom Woods. How are you?
I'm great. I'm always feeling good when I'm on my boat and on the water.
All right, we've got a few questions I'd like to ask you. First of all, tell us about who is Tom Woods.
Well, I'm a sailor. I'm a television and media professional. I'm a father. Those are my three principal occupations: sailing, being a good father, and working in the television and media business. I live in France. I've lived here for 50 years, despite my apparent youth. And I plan to be living and sailing for the next 20 years, like my friend Lenny, who's conducting this interview.
That sounds pretty good. You say you're on your boat. Can you tell us something about your boat?
Well, it's a very special boat. She's 103 years old. She's built of teak over oak frames way back in 1920 in Kiel, Germany. She was first laid down. And I have had her, or I like to say, she has had me in her life for the last 40 years. In America, we always refer to boats as a feminine object, not an it, but a she. I just found out the other day that the Italians do the same thing. It must be something about the dolce vita. But in any case, my boat is still going strong. She is 32 tons. She's ketch rigged, which means two masts, a larger mast forward, which is referred to as the mainmast, and a smaller mast aft, which is referred to as the mizzenmast. She is rigged in a Marconi rig. Traditionally, these boats were gaff rigged, but maybe that's a little too technical. The important thing is this boat has been sailed, and her wake has strung out between the northern part of the North Sea where she was built, down to the Mediterranean, back up to the Atlantic, countless times over the last 4 decades. She's a sweet sailor. She's a dependable boat despite her advanced years. And she is, to quote a friend who came on board not long ago, a work of art.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Well, we're doing this interview because we want to know something about your project that you've decided to undertake. What can you tell us about your project?
Well, as I said, I've been sailing for 40 years. Half of that time in the Mediterranean. And I mentioned I'm a father. I have a son who's 20 years old. No one at this point in our history can deny that there is a very grave danger to marine ecosystems, to a healthy environment as a whole, and indeed to life on planet Earth. So I thought to myself one day, I was sailing in the Mediterranean, enjoying myself as I have. I've had this great privilege of sailing the Middle Sea, the Mediterranean. And I thought to myself, I need to do something about this. And it has to go beyond going through my garbage and separating the plastics and the bottles. It has to go beyond saying this situation is very distressing and not doing anything about it. And essentially, my position is that even though our generation was not the author of the technology, which really began during the Industrial Revolution, but particularly the advent of plastics after World War II. So that was before I was born. And one could argue, well, I kind of inherited that problem. But if you look at it carefully, and if you try to be a little critical, a little self-critical, you could also say that our generation let it happen. And I thought to myself, is this what I want to be the legacy that I leave to my son and his contemporaries? And I thought, that's not possible. I can't do that. So I came up with an idea where I married my technical and creative expertise as a television executive to my knowledge and my skills as a sailor. And of course, Wiki, who I've now introduced, who's now 103 years old. And I thought, what a great opportunity to try to federate in a common endeavor all 22 countries that border the Mediterranean, that have shores that give on to the Mediterranean. 3 continents, 22 countries, different cultures, different languages, different priorities, but they all share a common love for the Mediterranean. They're dependent upon it at times economically. It could be for mass tourism, it could be for fishing, it could be for transport. And it's in everyone's interest that the Mediterranean does not turn into a sea of plastic, that it overheats, that the flora and fauna is compromised. And it's just not something that anyone wants to see happen. But there's really been no dialogue between the North and the South, between the countries of Northern Africa and Turkey and the countries of Southern Europe. So I thought that I would make this attempt to bring people together in a common cause. So Wiki will set sail in 2024 on August 15th, the day after the end of the Paralympics, hopefully from the city of Marseille, and will circumnavigate the Mediterranean during a 3-year period. In each country, we will create media. We will meet the people who live, work, and play on the Mediterranean. We will ask them to tell their stories. We will find out what the challenges are they face as investigative journalists. My partner in this endeavor is Ed Girardet, who I worked with for years as a reporter, among other places, in Afghanistan when the Russians had invaded Afghanistan, so zones of conflict. And we plan to be honest. We plan to be demanding, in the sense that we want to find out what the story is in each of these countries, how they're handling the challenges that are placed in front of them. But most importantly, we're interested in finding what solutions have been brought to the fore that allow us collectively to move forward. And I want to make the point, it's not about plastics and pollution. It's not about gloom and doom. It's about the joie de vivre. It's about the cuisine. It's about the culture. It's about the architecture. It's about the people, the language, and it's about having fun. To a degree, it's about dancing on the tables. It's about sailing with a purpose, leaving the Mediterranean a better place, making the world's oceans a healthier environment, and ultimately doing my part, doing our part, because we already have probably 20 young volunteers who are working with us, and some large corporations and some governmental organizations such as the UN-led Plan Bleu, who have decided to support us. And we plan to make a difference.
I see. I have a better idea now. So you're going to be starting next year in the summer. What is your first project going to be? What do you envision starting out to do?
So where will we start? Well, that's a very, very good question. Once again, we hope to start in Marseille, but we've also been approached by various other countries and have had discussions specifically with Monte Carlo and with Malta. Both are very attractive to us, but Malta is, of course, the center of the Mediterranean. So we would then be working in a different way. We would be working spokes on a wheel going back and forth to Malta. Whereas if we start in Marseille, we will circumnavigate. So the first question we have to ask ourselves as we come out of the port of Marseille. Now, think of this. Marseille was a Phoenician city. So when you sail the Mediterranean, you're sailing where the Phoenicians sailed, where the Greeks sailed, where the Romans sailed. There is an incredible depth of human experience and history and culture to be explored. So when we exit Marseille, the Phoenician city, we either turn right, which is to the west, or we turn east, which is to the left. So basically, our hope is to turn east, which means we'll travel up the French coastline and we'll stop and we'll go to places we know and places we're going to discover. One of them, for instance, is the Tour de Valat, which is a wetlands that has been preserved by a Swiss philanthropist and has protected the fowl and the fauna that come in on their way from their annual migrations from Africa. It's an extraordinary place. We're going to visit Saint-Tropez because Saint-Tropez has an interesting history. And again, it's not all gloom and doom. It's also about all of the Epicurean pleasures and the life of the people who are fortunate enough to vacation on the Mediterranean, or the people who work in the hotel business, or the people who are part of the support system, and where we hope to bring to people's attention the necessity for responsible tourism and how mass tourism will be better regulated. We'll go to Villefranche, which is one of the deepest harbors in the Mediterranean. It was previously the headquarters of the US Sixth Fleet before de Gaulle pulled out of NATO. And it's still an important port of call and an important safe harbor because it is both deeply indented and very deep, so it can take big ships. There's actually a dry dock there that dates from the 1500s, where French galleys were both built and maintained, and the unfortunates who rode the galleys were prisoners. So there's all this history. There's a wonderful garden there, the Garden of the Fusils de Rothschild. There are extraordinary places to visit and where you can get the essence of the Mediterranean, and you can have fun doing it. But again, identify the problems they encounter. What are the environmental threats, and what are the existential threats, and what are the solutions that they have found, so that we can then in turn share those. In this case, these are 3 French ports of call with the 21 other countries going around the Mediterranean. So proceeding east, we would go past Monte Carlo. We would stop in Monte Carlo. We'd visit the Oceanographic Institute there. We are very excited to be able to recount what the Principality has been able to accomplish in terms of becoming environmentally aware in terms of their population and the many visitors who enjoy Monte Carlo. We hope to speak with the Prince of the Principality and get his view in terms of the challenges that he has met and what he feels needs to be done in the future. Again, 100-year perspective. We arrive, we see what it was 100 years ago, we find out what it's about today, we identify the problems, we look at the solutions, and then what do we do to make sure that 100 years from now, there will be a pristine, better, healthier Mediterranean. So going around the Mediterranean in that direction, we go to Italy, through the states of Messina, up the Adriatic, down the Adriatic, through the Canal de Cohant, into the Aegean, and we would find ourselves at one point in Istanbul and the coast of Turkey, and then, of course, the entire southern coastline of the Mediterranean will open up for us. And one of the things that we intend to do is to go to places that normally are not on the average itinerary. For instance, Syria, the port is controlled by Russia to a great degree, or Libya, where, as we all know, there are some security issues. We'll go to Algeria, we'll go to Israel, we'll go to Tunisia, Morocco, and eventually come all the way around across the opening of the Mediterranean to the Atlantic, which is the Straits of Gibraltar, to Gibraltar itself, and then up the coast of Spain. And as we make this journey, and some of it will be difficult, and some of it you could say will be dangerous, but we're no strangers to that. Myself and my partner, Ed Girardet, who's a journalist of some renown, worked together in Afghanistan for 10 years during the Russian occupation of Afghanistan. So we know what combat situations can entail. We know how to conduct ourselves. We will have the support of local governments. We, if necessary, will have the support of the local military. We hope to have the support of the UN. And we want to tell the story of everyone, every country, every language, every culture, all the countries. Not say we're not going to Libya because it's dangerous, or we're not going to Syria because, for whatever reason, politically, we think that that would not be an easy port of call. We will go to each and every one of those 22 countries, tell their stories, identify the issues they confront, and share the solutions with their neighbors.
You talked about a 3-year journey. That's a long time. What do you hope to accomplish by the time you arrive at the end of this journey?
Well, Lenny, I'm 72 years old. And when I start this, I'll be 73. By the time I end it, I'll be 76. Maybe I should just sit on the couch and watch movies and order takeout, but that's not my nature. I want to go out and make a difference. So what I'm trying to accomplish is to make people aware of this shared common resource that is the Mediterranean, and to make everybody understand that it belongs to each and every one of us who live on the borders of the Mediterranean. It belongs as much to a kid playing on a beach in Algeria as it does to the owner of a super yacht cruising into Portofino. It belongs as much to the shipping companies that use it as a vital part of their commercial network as it does to a small hotel on the island of Porquerolles, which is a national park, by the way, we intend to visit, and to get people to pull together on this, to get people to say, hey, this belongs to all of us. We need to work together. So we need to tell their stories, and we need to share the solutions amongst them. So what do I hope to accomplish? First of all, I hope to be able to go all the way around the Mediterranean and visit all 22 countries. That's not a given, and not necessarily going to be welcomed by everybody or every country for that matter. We can hit bad weather. We could sink, God forbid, but it could happen. So we need to first strive to make the circumnavigation successful, to visit all 22 countries without exception. And at the end of it, if we're fortunate enough to return to the port from which we left 3 years ago, we will be able to share with the whole world the solutions that we've found. Because if it works in the Mediterranean, there's no reason it can't work in the Caribbean. If it works in the Caribbean, it should be able to work in the South China Sea. If it works in the South China Sea, and so on and so forth, it should work for the Pacific. It should work for the Atlantic. It should work for all the 5 oceans, so that together we're literally and figuratively in the same boat. That's my goal, that humanity, that all of us who share the world's seas and the world's oceans, that we understand that we're all in the same boat. We all have to row together to be able to avoid what is clearly a catastrophe in the making, where the oceans are dying and where, of course, the planet won't survive in the long term without a healthy ocean. So that's my mission, save the world.
I want to thank you, Tom. I understand your project much better now. And I certainly wish you fortune and, should I say, fair winds and following seas on your great, ambitious journey of 3 years around the Med.
Thank you. Now we're looking for corporate sponsors, high net worth individuals who want to make a difference. We also have a GoFundMe in progress, and the boat's already in the water. We're already sailing. We're on our way to Marseille to meet with some of the folks there, including the representative of the United Nations who heads up Plan Bleu, and also the municipal authorities and the folks at the mayor's office, and hopefully some of the big transportation companies that may share our desire and give us the means to move forward.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for taking this time to speak to us and to explain your project.
Thank you.